Welcome to Mark D. Maker. My name is Mark Taylor, and today we're going to be looking at different types of clay and how to use them to make models for your wood carving, your stone carving, even resin casting. Come on over to the workbench. Let's get started. Alright, I got a bunch of stuff to show you. So let's start with the most basic and the simple. Play-Doh. Just plain old Play-Doh. Super affordable. This is what I used for a long time. I made my own tools out of 10 gauge wire, hammering it out, sanding it, and making my own sculpture tools. So we got several of them here, several different types, shapes, sizes. Basically what I would do is emulate these. But your dental tools, and you can buy these at art supply stores. I probably got these at AC Moore's, Michael's has them, Hobby Lobby, Amazon, all those places. I also use, this is just a really cheap knife, like a kitchen knife, like a paring knife. You can buy like 6 of these for $3. The key to it is, look how thin it is. It is super thin. Because it's new, it's pretty sharp. I'll strop it to get the grinding marks off of it. That's a great tool because I can heat up quick and cut through some wax. Wooden sculpture tools, my Bob Ross palette knife. It could be any palette knife. Just Bob Ross. It makes me smile. Paint stick, popsicle sticks, a comb. These little tools, these are pretty cool. I use these for multiple things. For wood carvings, you can lean into them and make indentations. These are really tiny little balls on the end here. These are bigger ones. These are actually sold as cake decoration balls. But you can use them for clay. Very effective. Another a palette knife. X-Acto knives. Most patterns will look like this. Side view, top view. And here's your bird. Or whatever you're doing. Bear, a character, whatever. Now, if that bird was looking like this, but looking at you, the tail was splayed open a little bit, maybe one wing a little higher than the other, like it looked at you and went, oh, I'm gonna take off. That's character. That's artistic instead of static. This is kind of static. And a clay model will help you develop a pattern to make it look more alive, give it character. So here's a bear that I carved. And even though it's static, it is cute. I like him. But he's kind of static in the way he's standing, except for his legs here. Right here and in here, his legs are offset. So he has a little bit of movement to them. But if his head was turned, or he had a little bit more movement, let's look at a clay sculpture that I did, and it has much more like movement incorporated into it. Even his toe here, his little toe up in the air like that. It gives it a little bit more character, a little bit more movement. There's a lot of negative space. It's a little more interesting to look at. But most of your patterns are a little bit on the static side. So how do you get your pattern? Let's look at another example. That's a little clay guy. He's carving on a duck. This is sculpting. And to just carve that out of a piece of wood would be difficult unless you had the right pattern. And you'll probably have to make your own pattern. So you need to make a clay model first so you can get that pattern. So Play-Doh is the least expensive, and it's what I used for a long time. The next would be an air dry clay. DAS air dry clay. Now that's what that guy is. You can see, you know, it dries white there. It's similar to ceramic in its toughness. This is about $1. This is about, it's under $10. Now we're moving to a lot more professional medium, and this stuff is about $30 for 5 pounds. So yeah, that's a pretty big investment if you don't have any money. It comes in soft, medium, and hard. Now the trick to this stuff is you need to be able to soften it up to use it. It comes in a fairly brick-like state, especially the hard. You can take the medium and the soft and kind of scrape it up and warm it in your hands, but the best way to warm it up is with a crock pot. This is a crock pot. My wife was going to throw it away, and I grabbed it before it hit the trash can. And we'll be using that crock pot to heat up the Monster clay. Now, the container can handle going in the crock pot. It gives you specifications and directions right here to warm it up. You never want to exceed 170. That is very important. You don't want to burn your house down. 170, top temperature. So let's take a look at one of my favorite books here. And this fella's starting off with a sketch, which is a great way to start. You can get a nice composition with a sketch, and then you move on to doing a clay figure. These are going to be puffins. So you can see this is clay, and he's kind of working out the details. This is all about looking at composition and how your eye interacts with the pieces, especially if you have more than one thing to look at, is how it's coming together there. And that ended up being the actual cover for this book. Now let's take a look at some tools. This is a recent purchase from eBay. You can see the teeth on this. This is for unifying, for when you have a bunch of clay on there, you put different pieces of clay on it and you need to smooth it out. That's your first step right there. This will move things right along. Another tool that you can use, and you can make these tools yourself. This is just a thin piece of tin with these teeth in it, and it's made for unifying, for smoothing out and getting everything. It's like your first steps of unifying. Pair dividers, of course, always for all kinds of work. And these guys. This is a recent purchase. I wish I would have bought these years ago. It would have made things so much easier. This set of all these and all those was $15. Came from Taiwan, I believe. Let me show you something cool. This is an alcohol torch. So there's alcohol inside here and a couple of marbles. And as we get working on this clay, it has a wax base. This tool is used to help melt the wax to smooth it out. And you can also put your tools in it, warm it up a little bit, and it moves right through that waxy clay like nothing. Really easy to use. This is a new tool, and I'm really looking forward to using it. It's called an alcohol torch. It's used in the dental business to make dentures, and it's used in the jewelry business to smooth out wax. Wax, like if you're going to cast a ring or cast something with jewelry, that's how you make it nice and smooth. I have 3 earlier videos where I talk about air-dried clay. The armature is just aluminum foil. And this is one of my favorite air-dried clay sculptures that I've done. I call him the Blues Man. This next sculpture that I worked on is Albert Einstein, and I put him together over a pretty long period of time. When you're using this air-dried clay, you can wet it and add on clay later. It'll stick. You can see here I'm pointing to areas where I carved, and what I'll do is just wet that with a clear water paintbrush and rub it with my thumb or finger, and it smooths right out. Now here's the monster clay, and you can kind of get an idea. It's pretty hard. I'm putting some force on it here, but you can get little pieces like this to come up and just use the warmth of your hand, and you can work it like that. So if you're working on like a small project, see how quickly it gets really soft, and you can mold it. This container can go right into the crock pot if it'll fit. I happen to have a pretty large crock pot there, and it's in there. This probe gives me the temperature of it itself. If not, just put it on low
You want to take your time, keep it on low.
All right, let's take a look. It's very, very liquidy.
Now at this point, this is so thin, you could actually pour this in a mold and it would work. You could get a mold of this pretty easily. Dries pretty quickly, cools down pretty quickly, and starts to set up. You can see how soft it is. It's still warm, but it's very, very soft. And there you go, there's a duck. No. I'm just showing you, it's even right out of the crock pot. It's not too hot on your hands. You got to be careful that you don't burn yourself, but as it starts to cool, it peels right off in like sheets right off of your hand. So there's another type of clay called Roma plastilina, and you'll find that a lot of sculptors, professional sculptors, will use this type of clay. It also has to be put into a crock pot because it starts off very hard. Once it's warmed, it can be shaped much like this monster clay. All right, I have more than I need, and it doesn't go to waste. You just put it right back in to the container. It melts in, and you can use it next time. The important thing is keeping your working surface clean. You don't want to introduce anything into it, foreign matter, foreign objects, wood chips or anything like that. So you want to get your basic shape of your sculpture going. You can make small tweaks to it, and you can do a lot of detail to it. As it gets hard, you can get very fine detail in it. It holds detail beautifully. But while it's soft like this, you just want to get your main shapes, main parts of the body, and get those in. And you can see me just touching my finger to it. Just your fingerprint alone, just touching it, will blend those lines right together. You won't see them. Also, while the clay is in this state, is a perfect time to play around, experiment with it. You can change the shape of this thing pretty drastically while the clay is this soft. Here's it, for instance. Give that head a little twist around. So he's now looking in a different direction. Maybe bow the tail feathers down, or just experiment. See what different things look like. So the beauty of working with this clay is if you're not liking it, you can change it. You have very little time invested into it, so you can change it easily. Whoops, there's a little piece of air-dried clay there. Make sure to get that out of there and put it off to the side so it doesn't contaminate this clay wax. Now this is not a permanent sculpture. This sculpture could be used to take a mold off of, but in its finished state, it really doesn't get hard enough to keep as a permanent sculpture. So this would be what you call a study. And it will get much harder than this, which is why it holds detail so well. You could take a silicone, make a silicone mold of it. And let's just say, okay, you don't like him with his primary feathers crossed like that. No problem. Let's do something else. So as you saw, there's no armature to this. It's self-supporting, and it'll become more rigid as time goes on. As it continues to cool, it'll become harder and harder. And something like these wings, you may have to support them temporarily, but as they harden, they'll support themselves. You know, as you see, this is just a few minutes later, and it's really starting to cool off now, and the wings they'll support themselves at this point. And like I say, now is the time to play. Take advantage of the clay being soft. Play around with it. Look at its shape, form. Make it interesting. Now, if you're a wood carver or a stone carver, you're used to doing what's called subtractive art. You remove things away from it. And if you are that type of artist, you prefer that, you make it bigger, you exaggerate it, you make like the beak bigger, and then as it gets harder, you go in with like an X-Acto knife, and it trims beautifully. And now that eagle looks like a turkey. Nice. Okay. Let's try out the alcohol torch. We'll apply it, and just so you can see what it does. If you had detail on there or you wanted to smooth it out, it just kind of like remelts it, and it gets very smooth. In an upcoming video, I'm going to show how to make a pattern out of what you can form out of clay. Well, I hope this video was helpful. Please like, share, subscribe. I'll see you next time.